Welcome to the Career Wanderlust podcast, your compass for new career horizons. Today, we are speaking with Allen Shapard. Allen is a former corporate lawyer turned internationally recognized expert on marketing, communications, and branding. He has spent the past 20 years working with companies and institutions such as the Nobel Prize Foundation, PepsiCo, Cisco Systems, Samsung, Honeywell, KPMG, the Mayo Clinic, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the UN to increase awareness, influence, and revenue. He has also helped senior executives and royalty to strengthen their profile and thought leadership. Allen has held many senior level positions, including working as an SVP with APCO and IMG, and is currently the managing director for Noodle. Allen also serves on several nonprofit boards, including the Mark Foundation and the Genesis Prize Foundation. He is a senior fellow at the U.S. Council on Competitiveness. His work has been the subject of coverage in the New York Times, Financial Times, and The Economist, and he's also spoken frequently on branding, marketing, and communications. I'm really excited for our conversation. Allen, thank you for joining us on the Career Wanderlust podcast.
Well, thank you very much. That's a wonderful introduction, and I'm looking forward to talking.
I am too. I mean, you have an amazing wealth of experience. I am excited to hear. I mean, what would you share with us that you feel is some of the best career advice you've received and why?
Yes. Well, I would say one of the most important things that I really learned was over the years was to develop relationships with your clients, with your coworkers, and to really focus on that instead of transactions because it really will pay off in spades later on. And one example of that was that very early on in my career, I had my boss and his wife over for dinner around the holidays.
Mhm.
And his wife remarked, she said, Alan, all of our clients are sending you Christmas cards, but they don't send them to my husband. And she was really struck by that fact. And it really was because I was very interested in them as individuals and people. So I would say that was one piece of advice I would always recommend to people. I
That's
also would
smart.
say,
And I was saying that's really simple, just right now to send Christmas cards. So thank you for that very actionable piece of advice.
or
Please.
just remembering people's birthday, or if they have a relative in the hospital, checking out in on that. And it makes it in a time where things are much more atomized and antiseptic, it makes it more personal and that builds loyalty and friendship.
Yeah, yeah,
I
exactly.
would, I would say another thing is to always ask. This is a piece of advice that I give my kids because so many people are afraid to ask the key question. They dance around it. They have meetings, but they never get to the core point. And I was working with this internet conglomerate, Cisco Systems, and they were told they should never leave the room with a client or a boss without asking for the sale or what they really wanted.
Mhm.
And I found
Yeah,
that this has paid off
amazing.
immensely throughout my career, where I might have been hesitant to, because the worst thing is they can just say no, or you can
Right,
negotiate about something else.
right. I mean, this is powerful in all aspects of life, right? I mean, really, you have to ask. And you're right, we are scared to ask. Well, so many of us. I mean, I'll be honest, this is advice that I can use for myself too. But this is also advice that I give others in my role as a recruiter to people who are interviewing. I always tell them you ask for the job at the end. It's the people who let them know this is what I want. I'm going to have to be very clear. So, yes, in all aspects. So, with your clients, when you go and ask for the work, with new business, ask for the work. I love it. In
Totally.
relationships, ask for what you need.
Yes, and I
Yes.
just and the thing is that it's so the payoff is so much more likely than the disappointment that once you get over that hesitancy, it's
Right.
wonderful.
Yeah. And you know what? And sometimes you just need permission. So thank you for giving everyone permission right now to go out and ask.
I like
Now,
that.
what about a story? I'm sure you have many stories to share. Well, is there one or two that's come to mind that was like a powerful lesson for you? You learned something from it that was really impactful, and you feel other people might
Benefit
it
from
might
it.
help them, yes, by hearing it.
Well, I mean, I think one of the most interesting stories would be my association and work for and representation of one of the richest men in the world. And it came to be because I always use Google and the internet to study about somebody who I may have seen on television or I'm going to meet. And this particular individual who was from Saudi Arabia, I had seen this person on television and he was subject to very negative stereotypes. And I went online and I learned about how he was very much in favor of interfaith dialogue and he was in favor of women's rights at a time when that was not popular. And I wrote him a letter cold. And at that time, I was working in Cleveland and I wrote him a letter and I said, Your Highness, I think you're not being treated in the way that you should. And I really would like to help you portray yourself in your true, authentic self. And he called me up in my little office in Cleveland and said, Go to an airport, get on an airplane, come talk to me, and let's work together. And for the next 7 years, I really worked with him all around the world, helping him to reveal who he really was. And he's a world class philanthropist who's given billions of dollars to philanthropies. I helped him to prioritize his philanthropies. He gave a whole new wing on the Louvre Art Museum in Paris. I worked with him with the media. I worked with him with world leaders like Jimmy Carter and people like that. And it was just because I wrote a letter cold to his office. And it was a wonderful experience.
Yes. And not only that I mean, you asked, that's going back to your first advice. You asked, right? You wrote that letter, but you took the time to research. And I think this is really amazing, a great advice in all aspects, because when you take that time to research and learn about whoever it is that you're going to be meeting or, trying to get business with or what have you, there's so much there that you can learn to adapt your communication to a style that is going to resonate with them in the very best way. And it sounds like that's exactly what you did. And anyone can do that with the right steps. And you can make things like this happen for yourself in a proactive way. I love this story so much. It's fantastic. And then that turned into this amazing relationship for 7 years and doing incredible things. I mean, everything you just mentioned there sound pretty amazing. I
It
mean,
was amazing. And it was, and I learned so many lessons. And I also had it developed my understanding also of how people can really present themselves in their true light, sometimes with a little advice.
right, right. I think that's great. So tell us a little bit about Noodle. What do you guys do well there? What do you look for in your talent?
Great question. So, Noodle is the brainchild of an individual named John Katzman who created the Princeton Review. And he wanted and realized that universities were wanting to take their courses online and they needed help doing it correctly and also marketing and communicating that. And so Noodle helps universities and now it helps corporations and nonprofits like hospitals to educate people online so that they can improve their lives in different directions. And one of the key areas that we focus on is graduate degrees because within 2 or 3 years, basically 100% of your graduate degrees available will be online. So I was asked to come in and help with the promotion and communication around the degree programs and the universities and the professors who we were working with, as well as offering branding and communications advice for Noodle itself. And so it's been a wonderful experience working with entities like Tulane and Harvard and Columbia. And they're very intelligent professors who, again, have really interesting stories to tell and I help them to put together the faculty members with members of the media and then build that relationship. And I think it's a time of tremendous transition and opportunity for the whole industry. And that is something which is going to grow. It grew exponentially during COVID, but it's going to grow in a different way in the next 5 to 10 years.
Mhm. Completely agree. It's an amazing field, and I think it's a brilliant company. I can only see big things for companies such as this in the future. So that's great. And now, what about? I always just love to pass it forward. Is there something that you have read, watched, or listened to that had a positive impact on you that you feel other people could benefit from?
Yes, that's a great question. I'd say there are 2 books, actually. One was from a mentor and friend of mine named Mark McCormick, who wrote All You Needed to Know They Didn't Teach You in Harvard Business School.
Right.
And it is a phenomenal book, and even though it was written maybe, 2 decades ago, it still has resonance. And it's really a book that talks about how to use your common sense in business and let go a little bit of your technical knowledge or your process and be a real person. And I'd say the
Mm,
other book that was really helpful is something called Learned Optimism. And that's
okay.
by the head of the psychology department at the University of Pennsylvania. And it's really about how you talk about life that can really affect your actions. And he has an incredible number of examples of whether it's baseball teams whose coaches train them to think about success, whether it was a presidential election where the wording that the individuals use to describe themselves and their future. I really recommend it highly to people.
Mhm. Oh, I think that's amazing because it is powerful. The words we use change how we feel, it changes how people perceive us. It is something that I only learned later on in life that it was an incredibly powerful lesson. And they came from someone who, every time I would go there with words without even recognizing what I was doing, they'd call me out on. Like, no, no, Jolie, let's not use those words, right? And it's something that we don't notice. It's in our subconscious. But once you start noticing and you start making those little changes, it has a snowball effect on your own brain and how you interact with the world. It's incredibly powerful. So I'm going to check out this book myself too. Thank you for those
Well,
suggestions.
but in many cases, you've already taken advantage of that outlook. So this will only hone your skills because you've
Yeah.
done so many things.
Well, I love trying to teach other people about it as well. I think it's an amazing game changer in life. So great suggestion. Now, before you go, if you're willing to share, I'd love to know, what is your personal superpower?
That's that's a very interesting question. I think that I will call it an asset which anyone can develop, which is really twofold. One is being able to talk to anyone with the same respect, regardless of their status in society. So
Sure,
if
sure,
it
sure.
is someone who is low down on the totem pole, or if it's someone who is the highest leader of the greatest corporation, if you can treat them with the same type of respect and honesty and consideration, it will carry you so far. And I've had that experience with most every Hollywood celebrity I've dealt with. I've had that with corporate Fortune 500 leaders. I've had it with everyone. So I really encourage people to do that. And I think the last thing is to really listen actively to what people are talking about, because in so many cases, people don't do that as much as maybe they should. And it really will benefit you because you can tell what that person's interested in. So I think those are 2 assets
Mhm.
that anyone can nurture.
Yes, thank you. Well, and that's the thing about superpowers. That's what I love about this question, because we have these things that we develop ourselves throughout time, right? But they are things that everyone can develop. But sometimes we're not fully paying attention. So when we ask other people and hear about things that are serving them, it gives us the opportunity to try to develop it ourselves. And listening and treating people with respect at all levels, regardless of what your beliefs are 2 absolute superpowers that will carry you far in life. And I would imagine, would you say, Alan, that those have been 2 things that have helped you work with some of these leading companies and leading people throughout your career?
Very much so. And an example is that in certain situations where I have treated people who were maybe lower down on the pecking order with courtesy, the people who were higher up on the pecking order noticed. And they decided that if I was such a decent person, whether that's ordering at a restaurant or whether that's thanking someone for bringing you to a destination, that really gives a message to somebody maybe who you really want to work with or who you want to talk
Mhm.
to, that you are a very kind and decent person that they could trust.
Exactly. And let's be honest, that's the type of person we should all should be. So thank you for emulating that to the people around you.
Thank
Let us all be a little more like that. So Alan, thank you so much for joining us on the Career Wanderlust podcast. This has been wonderful.
Well, it was really fun, and I look forward to talking with you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on the Career Wanderlust podcast. If you find value in learning from others, give us a like and subscribe. If you're looking to grow your communications, marketing, public relations, or sales and biz dev team with the best talent and quickly, check us out at paradigmstaffing.com and submit a request. We are wishing you a most successful and fulfilling career. Until next time.